For days, almost nobody knew what really happened inside Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's wedding. Now, the most shocking moments are finally coming to light. From Travis breaking down in tears to speeches guests can't stop talking about. But one unexpected moment has everyone asking what really happened behind the scenes. Let me break it down. The morning of the wedding, black SUVs with tinted windows started pulling up to Madison Square Garden. A little after 3 in the afternoon, members of the media gathered outside the venue as large black SUVs began arriving shortly after 3 p.m., pulling into white tents set up outside. Nobody could see past the curtains. That was the point. For months, this wedding had been the worst-kept secret that nobody could actually confirm. Reporters had watched permits get filed, streets get blocked, hotel blocks get booked, and still, right up until the moment it happened, the couple didn't publicize a single detail until after they were already married. Then, on a Friday evening, the signal came. Giant purple signs lit up on screens outside Madison Square Garden, reading "Just ENT Married." A few blocks away, the Empire State Building lit up in blue in their honor, a nod to the old wedding rhyme. Then, almost on cue, a rainstorm began. Fans had been standing outside for hours by that point. Swifties stood outside MSG for hours amid rising temperatures as black SUVs with tinted windows, carrying guests, made their way into the curtained-off arena. They couldn't see a thing happening inside, but they could see who was walking in, and that's where the first shock landed. This wasn't a small private ceremony for 2 famous people in their closest circle. This was a 1,000-person guest list that was impressive, expansive, and occasionally befuddling. Steven Spielberg walked in. So did Tom Brady. Andy Reid, Kelce's own head coach, was there. Gigi Hadid and Bradley Cooper arrived together. Selena Gomez showed up in a golden beaded gown, the same color Swift wore to Gomez's own wedding the previous September. Chris Rock, Hugh Grant, Jennifer Lopez, Ed Sheeran, Jimmy Fallon. The parade of arrivals also included Ethan Hawke, Gwen Stefani, Benson Boone, Jason Sudeikis, Abby Wambach, Cooper Kupp, Roger Goodell, Joe Buck, and Jenny Han. Paul McCartney and Tom Hanks were spotted departing hours later. This wasn't a wedding, it was a summit. But the moment that actually broke the internet wasn't who showed up, it was who married them. To officiate, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce pulled in comedian and actor Adam Sandler, a longtime friend who had previously gushed over the pair's relationship. Sandler wasn't some ceremonial figurehead either. He had personal history with Kelce, having given Kelce a cameo in Happy Gilmore 2 the year before. And once guests started talking, they made it clear Sandler didn't just read a script. According to George Stephanopoulos, who attended alongside his Good Morning America co-anchors, Robin Roberts and Michael Strahan, the ceremony was moving, and Sandler struck a balance between comedy and sincerity that left the room stunned. Stephanopoulos described the vows as real, vulnerable, serious, and silly, deeply loving. That detail about the vows is where things start getting genuinely shocking, because Swift and Kelce didn't read polished minute-long promises. While wedding vows typically last 1 to 3 minutes per person, the couple took their time. Their vows reportedly ran about 20 minutes each, and the couple handed out embroidered handkerchiefs to guests, which turned out to be necessary. 20 minutes each, in front of 1,000 people, including some of the most famous faces on the planet. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. It wasn't the bride who broke down. 2 guests who spoke to NBC News were adamant about this. You would think the bride would be the one crying more, but it was actually Travis that was more emotional. One of the attendees said, the 3-time Super Bowl champion, the tight end who's caught passes in front of 70,000 screaming fans, reportedly needed those handkerchiefs more than anyone else in the room. Swift's vows carried their own surprise. She didn't just speak, she sang. She didn't take the stage herself during the reception, but the 2 attendees confirmed Swift sang a bit during her vows in the ceremony. Nobody said exactly what she sang or what the lyrics were. That detail is still locked behind the same wall of silence that kept this entire event a secret for months. But guests who were there said the exchange between the 2 of them left the crowd in tears, describing the entire night as something close to unbelievable to witness in person. Before any of that ceremony detail leaked, though, there was the walk-in. Guests didn't just arrive at a wedding venue. They walked through what amounted to a piece of stagecraft. According to 2 people who spoke with NBC News, guests first entered through a tunnel featuring photos of Swift and Kelce throughout the years, from childhood through their relationship, before stepping into what the couple called their secret garden. One guest, AMC CEO Adam Aron, described it in a post before deleting it. The venue had been turned into a secret garden, complete with large photos of Swift and Kelce at every age. So by the time guests had even reached their seats, they'd already walked through a timeline of the couple's entire life together. 20,000-seat arena transformed into something closer to a garden installation. 20-minute vows, a groom brought to tears. And that was still just the ceremony before a single reception performance, before the food, before the raffle, before anything resembling the party had even started. Here's where the story gets interesting, because the internet spent months building an entire fantasy roster for this wedding, and almost none of it held up. Betting markets like Kelce and Polymarket had turned the guessing game into real money. The wedding had already generated more than $4.5 million in wagers on Kelce before it even happened. People bet on the venue, the guest list, the dress designer, even whether Swift was pregnant. Taylor Swift's empire remained a hot topic, but the betting extended to who would stand beside the couple. Jason Kelce was favored to serve as groomsman at 94% odds, followed by Patrick Mahomes at 87%. On the bride's side, as of the days before, Jason Kelce was the top pick for groomsmen at 94%, with Austin Swift and Patrick Mahomes also in contention, while Abigail Anderson Berard held the lead for bridesmaid at 85%. Almost all of it was wrong. Not because the predictions were bad guesses, because Swift and Kelce threw out the entire concept of a wedding party. The couple had no bridesmaids or groomsmen at all. Instead, Swift's brother, Austin Swift, served as her man of honor, while Kelce's brother, retired NFL lineman Jason Kelce, served as his best man. That's it. 2 siblings. No entourage of A-list best friends standing at the altar. No matching bridesmaid dresses. None of the traditional pageantry everyone assumed would come with a wedding this size. The betting markets actually paid out on this shock. Those who had bet on no bridesmaids took home the winnings, even though the odds on Abigail Anderson Berard being maid of honor had climbed as high as 85%. Meanwhile, those who'd wagered on Jason Kelce as best man at 94% did cash in, and Austin Swift stood beside his sister as her official man of honor. It was, in the end, a wedding built entirely around family, not fame, even while fame filled every other seat in the building. That decision reframed the whole event. Guests who'd expected a red carpet wedding party instead got a ceremony where the 2 most important supporting roles went to brothers, not celebrities. And it wasn't the only place the couple defied the odds. On the fashion front, predictors saw a massive payout when 60.5% of traders correctly bet on a custom Dior gown, beating out competing bets for Vera Wang and Louis Vuitton. Dior and Christian Louboutin custom designed the wedding attire for the couple, with Swift's dress made by Christian Dior Haute Couture and jewelry from Cartier. Then there's the guest list itself, which turned into its own kind of spectacle. It wasn't just about who showed up, it's about who didn't. Betting markets had built entire categories around snub predictions. Blake Lively was pegged as one of the biggest projected snubs, with many bettors speculating she wouldn't receive an invitation following the fallout from her legal dispute with Justin Baldoni that had drawn Swift into headlines. The prediction held. She wasn't spotted arriving, departing, or mentioned in a single guest recap. Meanwhile, names nobody expected to see together were suddenly standing in the same room. The Hollywood contingent included Steven Spielberg, Gigi Hadid, Bradley Cooper, Dakota Johnson, Eric Stonestreet, and Hugh Grant, alongside Kansas City native Jason Sudeikis, comedian Nikki Glaser, Jennifer Lopez, Graham Norton, Jimmy Fallon, and Zoe Kravitz. There were sports figures too. New England Patriots head coach Mike Vrabel and sportscaster Aaron Andrews among them. Even people who weren't invited had opinions about it. New York City's own mayor became an unlikely part of the story weeks before the wedding even happened, joking about the situation despite having no role in it whatsoever. It became a running gag across the city. Everyone had something to say about a wedding almost nobody was actually invited to. And then there was the money itself. Luxury wedding planners estimated the cost could run into the tens of millions. One planner told the New York Post that renting Madison Square Garden alone could cost nearly $2.5 million, with the total bill potentially reaching $10 million to $20 million once security, catering, entertainment, and production were factored in. For context, the average American wedding cost about $34,000 in 2025, or roughly $292 per guest. Some estimates for the Swift-Kelce wedding pushed even higher. Reports floated a price tag that could easily top $20 million once every performer, every security contractor, and every custom build was tallied. That kind of spending brought a specific kind of secrecy too. This wasn't just about privacy. It was closer to a security operation. Guests were reportedly required to check their phones at the door. The event had a strict no cell phone policy, with guests forced to check their mobile devices before entering in an effort to guarantee maximum privacy. That's why it took days for any real details to leak. Nobody inside the room had a way to post anything in real time. What got out came only after guests left in interviews, in Instagram posts uploaded well after midnight, in quotes given quietly to reporters days later. And it's precisely because of that blackout that when the details did start surfacing, they landed like actual news. Every account, every quote, every photo posted afterward felt like contraband smuggled out of the most locked down party of the year. If the ceremony was about restraint, family standing in for a wedding party, a groom crying through his vows, the reception flipped the entire mood. This is where the night turned into something closer to a private concert than a dinner party. Once the vows were done, the room transformed. After the ceremony, Taylor's mom reportedly invited everyone into the reception room where a stage had been set up. And that stage did not sit empty for long. Paul McCartney walked out and performed one of the most recognizable songs of his career for the newlyweds. A source told People that Paul McCartney took the stage to perform I Wanna Hold Your Hand for the newlyweds, followed by Stevie Nicks and Tim McGraw. Think about that lineup for a second. A Beatle, a member of Fleetwood Mac, a country music giant, all performing at one wedding for one couple on one stage inside Madison Square Garden, the same arena that's hosted championship fights and sold-out concerts. Now repurposed as the site of a private set list, nobody outside that room got to hear live. Guests who spoke to NBC News confirmed the scale of it. 2 guests said the reception included performances by Paul McCartney and Stevie Nicks, in addition to a raffle featuring the same kind of car Swift and Kelce took on their first date. That raffle detail turned out to be one of the more sentimental touches of the whole night. The raffle items reportedly included multiple designer bags and a 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle, a nod to the newlyweds' first public date, when Kelce drove Swift home in a similar vehicle after her first Chiefs game appearance. But the reception wasn't only about big-name performers on a stage. The couple built in interactive moments too. The pair gave guests the chance to play games at the reception in exchange for raffle tickets. And there weren't any small prizes involved. 1,000 of the most famous people in entertainment and sports playing party games for a shot at a vintage muscle car. That's not a detail anyone predicted going into the night. The food became its own small controversy. Despite the scale and cost of the event, some guests reportedly weren't thrilled with how dinner was served. Insiders described long lines and a buffet-style setup that some found surprising given the size of the budget behind everything else. The reception offered multiple bars and food stations featuring sushi and Italian cuisine, with one source describing the scene as very crowded, referencing a venue that typically holds around 22,000 concertgoers. 22,000 capacity, filled with roughly 1,000 guests, and still guests were describing crowded food stations and lines. That's the kind of detail that doesn't fit the polished image most assumed a wedding at this level would have, and it became one of the more talked about surprises once word got out. Then there was the rehearsal dinner the night before, which turned out to have its own headline moment. Swift didn't perform during the actual wedding reception, but she wasn't silent the whole weekend either. The night before, the couple said "I do" at Madison Square Garden. The two of them performed together at their star-studded rehearsal dinner, singing their favorite rock song together in front of guests. While Swift didn't perform at the actual wedding, she did perform at the rehearsal dinner the night before. That detail, a private duet performed the night before roughly 100 guests, followed by total silence on stage the next night despite a room full of legendary musicians, became one of the more debated pieces of the whole weekend. Some guests found it endearing that she let McCartney, Nicks and McGraw have the spotlight on the actual wedding night. Others wondered if she was simply saving her voice or her nerves for the 20-minute vow that reportedly included singing anyway. Either way, the 2 nights together painted a picture of a couple who treated their wedding less like a single ceremony and more like a full weekend production. Rehearsal dinner, ceremony, reception, each one with its own surprises, each one guarded by the same wall of silence until guests started talking days later. And they kept talking. Photos started trickling out from unlikely sources. A photo shared by personal trainer Rob Jordan and his wife Joanne offered the first real glimpse inside the event that Stephanopoulos described as a garden inside the garden, showing the couple walking hand in hand up an orange carpeted staircase toward the ceremony entrance. Musician Maren Morris later shared her own personal gift from the couple, a custom piece referencing one of Swift's own songs, a small detail that fans immediately picked apart and celebrated online. By the time Saturday morning rolled around, the reception was still going. The plans had called for a cocktail hour, ceremony, and reception, with the celebration expected to stretch into the early hours of Saturday. Guests confirmed that's exactly what happened. The party ran long after midnight, with stars still filing out of Madison Square Garden well into the early morning hours. Crowds still lined up outside, hoping for one last glimpse of anyone famous enough to be worth a photo. While guests partied inside Madison Square Garden, a different kind of spectacle was unfolding online. One measured in dollars, not decibels. This wedding didn't just get talked about, it got traded. Betting platforms Kelce and Polymarket turned nearly every detail of the event into a market people could put real money on. And by the time the wedding actually happened, the numbers had ballooned past anyone's expectations. The wedding led to speculative wagers on everything from the date to the guest list, seeing over $6.3 million in total trading volume across platforms like Kelce and Polymarket. That kind of volume attracted a different kind of bettor than these platforms usually see. Many placing bets were Swift's loyal fans, mostly women who had been anticipating the day she'd wed for years, confident enough about details of the event that they stepped into prediction markets for the first time. This wasn't the typical sports betting crowd. This was fandom turned into finance. The venue market alone tells the story of how confident and how wrong at times the crowd could be. Contracts for Madison Square Garden were initially priced lower than those for Rhode Island, where Swift owns a home, before soaring past 80 cents on the dollar, just ahead of resolving as correct. New York had been the favorite for months, but the margin kept shifting as reporters uncovered new permit filings and street closure notices. Some of the specific bets on offer bordered on strange. Bettors weighed in on whether Swift would wear a Dior wedding dress, whether Justin Trudeau would attend, and whether Selena Gomez would serve as her bridesmaid. One market in particular drew almost universal agreement, and it wasn't even about the wedding itself. Polymarket bettors poured more than $2 million into a market on whether Swift was pregnant, and only 2% believed she was already expecting. Not every bettor walked away a winner, though. The wedding party market turned into one of the biggest upsets of the whole event. Odds had climbed as high as the mid-80s and 90s for specific individuals to stand up in the ceremony, and then the couple scrapped the entire concept of a wedding party altogether, cashing out anyone smart enough to bet against tradition and blindsiding everyone who bet on star power. The scale of the trading wasn't lost on the platforms themselves either. Kelce noted that it had already seen $600 million in trading on entertainment markets that year alone, double the amount from the previous year. The platform also reported that the number of female traders had doubled over the past year, a shift directly tied to events exactly like this one. Not everyone was thrilled about the phenomenon, though. Gambling policy experts pushed back on what this all represented. Jonathan Cohen, the gambling policy lead at the American Institute for Boys and Men, argued that prediction markets were filling a void in society by turning every single thing into a gambling contract, adding that when celebrities get married, people want to gamble on it. Researchers also flagged something less obvious: the emotional cost of treating a celebrity's private milestones like a stock ticker. One expert warned that if a celebrity lets you down by not marrying on the predicted day, or not choosing the bridesmaid you expected, it can spark negative feelings, shifting from feeling supported by the celebrity to feeling betrayed by them. Even the mechanics of these markets became part of the story. Winners didn't just walk away with bragging rights. Actual money changed hands, verified against real news reporting once the event concluded. On Kelce, an internal team verifies outcomes against source reporting, typically within 12 hours of confirmation, with payouts landing about 3 hours after that. What's remarkable is how much of the eventual reality the crowd actually nailed, even while missing some of the biggest twists. They correctly called the venue. They correctly called the designer. They completely missed the decision to skip a wedding party altogether. It's a strange kind of scoreboard. Thousands of strangers betting real money on the private choices of two people they've never met, getting some of it eerily right and some of it entirely wrong. By the time the last market resolved, one thing was clear. This wedding hadn't just become a cultural event. It had become a genuine, verifiable, real money economy, one that outlasted the actual party by days. as slow confirmations trickled in from guests who were only now willing to talk. By Saturday morning, the crowds outside Madison Square Garden had thinned, but the story was only just beginning to take real shape. Because for days, the wedding existed only as rumor and blocked off street signs. Now, for the first time, actual guests were willing to describe what they'd witnessed. Once live coverage of the wedding wrapped, outlets began framing it as the culmination of the couple's long public love story. But it was the smaller human details, the ones nobody could have predicted from the outside, that stuck with people longest. The image of Travis Kelce, a man who's absorbed hits from professional linebackers for over a decade, needing an embroidered handkerchief to get through his own wedding vows. The image of two brothers standing in place of an entire wedding party, while 1,000 of the most famous people on the planet watched. The image of Paul McCartney playing a 60-year-old Beatles song to a couple who'd first bonded over a football stadium. There was also a strange kind of poetry that fans immediately noticed, tied to something Swift had talked about for years. For most people, the number 13 is considered unlucky, but Swift has long embraced it. She said she was born on the 13th, turned 13 on a Friday the 13th, and had her first album go gold in 13 weeks. 13 days after a numerology-heavy social media moment, the couple had announced their engagement the previous August. Fans spent the days after the wedding running their own numbers, hunting for another version of that pattern hidden somewhere in the date. The guest count, the timing of the storm that rolled in right as the announcement dropped. The economic ripple effects didn't stop at the betting markets either. Businesses nearby tried to cash in on the moonlight left behind. Reports surfaced of a nearby bakery offering free bread tied to the wedding, a small but telling sign of just how far the cultural footprint of this single night reached beyond the guest list itself. And then came the tributes. Once the news was confirmed, celebrities who weren't even at the wedding started posting their own reactions publicly, treating the marriage as a moment worth marking regardless of whether they'd gotten an invite. Musicians, actors, athletes, all weighing in within hours of the confirmation, turning a private ceremony into something that felt, for a weekend, like a shared national moment. Not every detail out of the wedding was glowing either. The buffet lines, the crowded food stations inside a venue built for tens of thousands, became their own minor talking point. Proof that even a wedding with a price tag climbing into the tens of millions still had guests standing in line for dinner like anyone else. It's the kind of detail that made the whole event feel, briefly, human. A reminder that even the most engineered, most secretive, most heavily bet upon wedding in recent memory still came down to two people getting married in front of people they loved. Some of them crying, some of them singing, all of them sworn to secrecy until they weren't anymore. What happens next for the couple is still mostly unknown. The pair hadn't shared a honeymoon destination or other post-wedding plans, though one journalist who teaches a course on the pop star speculated there's probably new music coming. Given Swift's history of turning every major chapter of her life into an album, that guess doesn't feel far-fetched. If there is a record inspired by this stretch of her life, it will likely carry the same fingerprints as everything else about the wedding. A private, guarded process that the public only gets to piece together after the fact, one leaked detail at a time. For now, the full picture remains scattered across interviews, deleted social posts, and secondhand accounts from guests who waited days before saying anything at all. But piece by piece, the moments that made this wedding what it was have kept surfacing. The 20-minute vows, the tears from the groom instead of the bride, the siblings standing in for a wedding party, the millions bet by strangers who will never meet either of them. The Beatles on a stage inside an arena built for basketball games. Put together, they tell the story of a wedding that lived up to every bit of the hype it built for over a year. Right down to the moments nobody saw coming until it was already over. Sources: Washington Post, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce as wedding guide. CNN, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce tie the knot. CNN, the wedding was the spectacle you expected. CBS News, married in ceremony officiated by Adam Sandler. Wikipedia, wedding of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Hollywood Reporter, prediction market winners. Psy, photos from the MSG wedding. Online, blank space egg wedding gift. Today, guests share details of the nuptials. Yahoo, surprising detail about the wedding vows. Online, rock duet at rehearsal dinner. Hollywood Reporter, prediction markets betting frenzy. News Nation, wedding speculation fuels millions in betting. CBS News, wedding rumors fuel millions in bets. Fox News, betting frenzy reveals overwhelming prediction. HuffPost fans betting millions on the wedding. CNN. Prediction markets go wild with wedding questions. Fox News wedding date, guest list and venue.